Hi guys, so this week we are focusing on art and textiles together, and textiles is just a fancy word for fabrics, and often these fabrics are specific to a certain region or a certain culture. So this week we're looking at the Adinkra cloth, and they incorporate a lot of patterns in their cloth that have meanings to them. So I would encourage you to take a look at some of those symbols that we included in the slideshow and maybe find a couple of traditional Adinkra symbols that you might want to include in your artwork this week, and then see if you can come up with some your own symbols that have some meaning to you, some personal meaning. So you will need a couple of things for this project. One, you're going to need some pieces of cardboard. This is going to be like the backing for our stamp. You can use an old box lid, cardboard from an old package, anything that's sturdy. And then I just cut mine into the sizes that I think my stamps are going to be, or that my designs will fit on top of. Okay, so that's going to be the base of our stamp, and I just have a couple of pieces of an old box lid cut off. The next thing that you will need is either some kind of foam, or you can use cardboard if you don't have any foam at home. So if you happen to have some craft foam, that's perfect. I don't have craft foam at my house, so I'll be showing you what foam I'm using in just a minute. But if you don't have access to anything that is a foam material, you can go ahead and just use another piece of cardboard for the design of your stamp, and you're just going to glue this on top. The reason that we say that foam is a little bit better than cardboard is just because cardboard is a little bit difficult to cut in certain shapes. You really have to work at it, and you have to be extra safe when you're cutting cardboard because it's so tough to cut through. Our instinct is to go really hard at it, and then you might accidentally cut your finger. So if you're making your stamp shapes out of cardboard, you can absolutely do it. Just be extra careful when you're cutting and go really slow, especially around curved edges. Okay, so like there, I have a kind of a leaf shape made of cardboard, and I could glue that down, and that could be the surface of my stamp. If you have access to something made of styrofoam at home, like for example, I have a styrofoam plate here, but I also have an old lid from an egg carton container, a styrofoam egg carton container, which maybe a lot of you have this at home as well, and you could borrow the top and cut it up from your egg carton. So I've gone ahead and I've just drawn a couple of Sharpie designs on this lid and on my plate, and I'm just going to do my best to cut around so that I can cut all the details into this little hand. And this was one of the symbols that I came up with for myself. To me, this represents being helpful or giving a helping hand to others. So now I'm going around the edges of my stamp, and I'm just going to cut in all the details. I also did a couple of traditional designs from Adinkra Cloth on this styrofoam plate that I will be cutting out and gluing down as well. Let's talk about how we turn this into a stamp now. So now that you have a foam piece and you have your cardboard back, all you have to do is glue down your foam piece onto the surface. Remember not to use too much glue, because if it oozes out the sides of your foam piece, it has the potential for that dried glue to pick up some of the paint we'll be using, and we don't want it to do that. So I'm just going to give it a couple little drops, little dots of glue, and then I'm going to glue that into the center of my stamp base. Now, in order to use this on my piece of paper that I'm going to be stamping, I have some black paint. You could also, just like we talked about with printmaking, if you want to color it with a washable marker on the surface of your stamp, and then give your paper a little spritz with a spray bottle or wipe it down with a damp paper cloth, that marker will transfer onto your paper too. If you have paint at home, I would suggest you also grabbing either a fork from your kitchen, which you're going to rinse off immediately after using it with paint, of course, and with your grown-up's permission, or a plastic fork. And we're gonna start using that fork and our paint to create some division in our paper. So here, I have a plastic fork. I'm going to dip the tongs into my black paint. And then I'm just gonna drag it down my paper in sections. And just like our printmaking project, I personally think it looks kind of cool that your lines aren't perfect, that they're maybe starting to disappear in certain areas, because it gives it that printmaking look that I really enjoy. So you would divide up your paper into sections, like say maybe a grid. You could do some sort of design with these. Can make your spaces really big and your stamps really big, or your spaces really small and your stamps really small. All right, so now that I have some sections for my stamps to go in, all I have to do is once my glue is totally dry, which mine is not yet, but I'm gonna cheat it a little bit and go ahead and paint the surface so I can show you what it looks like. I'm just gonna paint over this raised surface of my foam and not my cardboard. And then all I have to do is tip it upside down, make sure it's centered in my little squares, and give it a firm press with my hand on the back. And ta-da! I made my own stamp for printmaking, and then you can reuse this stamp over and over and over as many times as it will hold up for you. So we hope you guys have a lot of fun making your own stamps this week, coming up with some symbols that represent you, or representing some symbols from our Adinkra cloth, and celebrating art and textiles coming together as one. We can't wait to see what you make. Bye!